Good afternoon to all our South African listeners, and good morning to those of you who are sort of east of the meridian or west of the meridian. Welcome to the first BizVal webinar for 2024. For those of you who are counting, this is now our 15th webinar, so hopefully we're getting a little bit better at this. And, it continues to grow and hopefully add value to you, your listeners, and, people that you're sharing this webinar with. So from the BizVal team, we wish everyone a prosperous and successful 2024. I'm Graham Stephen, the co-founder and CEO of BizVal. And today I'm actually joining from London, although I've got my virtual app in the background. So you can't see the gray clouds and the dreary wind outside. I'm joined by my co-founder and regular co-host, the Finance Ghost, as well as our other special guest today, Graham Davies, who's the CEO and founder of Edition Finance. And we'll do a formal introduction of him a little bit later. So BizVal's strategic focus this year is to grow and expand internationally. And while from day one we've been set up as a global business, our initial focus over the sort of first 18 months has really been around building a solid foundation in South Africa. And this year we're knuckling down on expanding internationally, both into the UK and the United States in particular. Launching in a new market or growing a team internationally isn't simply a case of cut and paste, rinse and repeat. There are some skills which are inherently transferable internationally, and technology, things like Zoom, etc., has also enabled and facilitated the ability for even smaller businesses to support a distributed workforce. Graham Davies, and I'm thankful to say his name is spelt in the correct way, is a great example of somebody who's done this successfully. And today he's going to share his story and some insights as to how he's grown Edition Finance, an innovative fractional accounting and CFO business across the UK, and building a strong remote team based out of South Africa. So before we get started, just some general housekeeping. The chat section, I think, should be set to private, and so only the presenters and moderators can see the messages. Please feel free to add any questions as we go along, and we'll pick these up either as we're going along if it's relevant, or when we get to the Q&A session. We are recording the webinar, and it will be made available on YouTube in case something comes up or you need to drop off the call halfway through. Please check out the handout section of the webinar, and you can download our latest newsletter over there. So this week, we are running a poll again. So the poll question this week is, are you considering expanding your business internationally, and why? And there's 4 options. Yes, to diversify risk. Yes, to take advantage of growth opportunities. Yes, for cost or skills arbitrage. Or no, it hasn't crossed your radar and you're keeping things local. Finally, if you've missed any of our previous webinars, these are available on both our website and YouTube channel. So without any further ado, we're going to move on to the meat of the conversation. So Graham, firstly, welcome to the BizVal webinar. And would you mind, just by way of introduction, giving a quick introduction about yourself? What is Edition Finance? What does it do? And basically why you started the business. And then after that, we'll go into sort of a formal discussion and chat with yourself. So over to you to give a brief introduction to our listeners.
Thanks, Graham, and yeah, thanks for having me on the webinar. Really looking forward to the conversation, and great to welcome you to London as well. Shame we couldn't welcome you with slightly better weather, but serves you right for coming in the winter, I guess, and not the summer. Yeah. So anyway, thanks so much for having me on. Bit of an intro to Edition and maybe me as well. My background is I trained in industry, SEMA accountant, and basically spent my career working a number of senior finance roles in industry across a number of different sectors, and latterly got more involved in strategic finance projects such as M&A, and worked in in-house corporate finance teams, and worked on projects such as acquiring an airport was one project I worked on, restructuring businesses financially when it comes to financing around debt and equity and everything else as well, and being part of those teams doing those large projects. But I then left the corporate world to work with startups. I wanted to become a portfolio CFO for startups. It felt like I wanted to have an impact with those companies and see the value that I could add, something that was very hard to do in the corporate world. And started doing that and working with a number of companies here in the UK, kind of saw that there's a bit of an issue in the SMB market around accounting and finance support, and really found that, SMEs are dealt really not a very nice hand when it comes to customer experience. Typical accountants aren't good at customer service and customer experience. And generally accountants would be very much focused on compliance work. And there wasn't really that level playing field when it came to, having SMEs and high growth businesses who have got aspirations to become a big business, really leveling the playing field and giving them great quality financial data and insight to move their business forward. And so that was really the trigger for me to start Audition, which was, why can't I bring what we had in the corporate world to SMEs, level the playing field and help them maximize their chances of success, whatever success is for their business. How do we go about doing that? So that's when we launched Audition. And at the time, 5 years ago, was very much the time of, well, there's lots of apps to automate things. So we started building a combination of third-party tools to automate bookkeeping as much as we possibly could. And then latterly started to build out our own proprietary system as well, which is really focused on automation. So the best way to describe what we are right now is a tech-enabled financial management service. Now, that involves us supporting businesses with everything from bookkeeping to accounting work to fractional CFO services as well. And the tech-enabled part is really around automation and standardizing that customer experience, the customer service, and making those customers feel valued and giving them the support they need. SME owners really need that support. So that's where we're at right now. We're currently working with about 150-ish companies across the UK and a small number in the US. And importantly, while we're chatting today, is we recently, around less than 18 months ago now, decided to start building a team in South Africa. And I guess that's why we're talking today.
Fantastic. Well, Graham, thanks for that background and the introduction. And I think I'm going to hand over to the Ghost, who's going to sort of facilitate a bit of discussion around that. So, Ghost, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So we have two Grahams today, just to make life a little bit more complicated. So we'll just have to go with Graham S and Graham D. I don't know what else to do, really. We can go with Stephen and Davies, because Graham Stephen was blessed with two first names. Davies almost. But, I think it'll be obvious who we're talking to each time, hopefully. So Graham D, it's very interesting. Thanks for the intro. I mean, England, not so good at beating us at rugby, but clearly quite good at outsourcing to our sort of accounting services. So nice to see that works out well for you. I suppose, what was it that you liked about what you saw in South Africa in terms of some of the staff here, the skills here? I imagine the time zone is quite helpful. Did some of that stuff go into your thinking when you were initially figuring out whether this approach would work?
I knew the rugby thing would come up, always going to come up. But
I thought I'd get it out the way.
Well, they even, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, England even outsources half their rugby team to South Africa or Scotland when you look at the number of Panamabbers and what have you in the rugby side.
At least you don't have anyone on the MMA space, Graham, so you'll avoid those jokes, because that's our new, we just like it when South Africans beat other people up. We're very good at that.
Well, just wait another 4 years to the next World Cup, guys. We're building back.
That time it's different. Yeah.
Exactly. Really interesting question. We decided a little while ago that actually to deliver that enhanced experience at a price point that actually SMEs are willing to pay in the UK, we really need to enhance our experience. And it was actually a challenge at the time, post-COVID. So how do we hire the best people in the UK? And it was a challenge at the time post-COVID, because there was this thing called the Great Resignation in the UK. I think it was in the US as well. I'm not sure if you had it in South Africa, but basically it was very competitive. The job market was really hot. I think it was all of the surplus cash that was in various economies really kind of artificially drove productivity and hiring and everything else. And it was a crazy time to hire people. We couldn't hire people. We had people who had accepted an offer with us, and on the Friday before starting, called us and said, we can't come on Monday because our employer's just given us a 50% pay rise or something. And so we were completely priced out of the market there. Crazy time. So it was actually a good opportunity for us to look overseas. And we looked at a number of places. And the reason why South Africa stood out for us was because, like you rightly said, the time zone works really well. But importantly, like our thing around the talent again and delivering that amazing service and having really talented people who can interact with our customers led us down the route of South Africa because you've got a really great education system. I think we looked at some stats, and I think business and accounting type degrees were massively the most popular. There was lots of graduates, lots of people studying those subjects at university. And, just it seemed like a really great talent pool. The language was, everyone generally speaks English in South Africa, which is great, and fluent, which is fantastic, and time zone and really access to the best talent. And that's really what sold it for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we certainly didn't have the great resignation. I can tell you that for free. We have the great unemployment problem. Nothing like flush. I remember reading about that stuff during the pandemic overseas, and I thought, geez, it could not be more different in South Africa, but it is what it is. I guess the follow-up from me, and then I'll let our Graham ask the next question, is just, has that panned out the way you expected? I guess. I mean, it seems like it's been successful in terms of bringing South African resources in. You seem to be happy with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the team that we have right now, we're a team of, I think, 28 right now, around that kind of number, 20 to 30. We have a fantastic team. Everyone is aligned with where the business is going, aligned with our values, and importantly, they're really smart people. It's really, really switched on. And to be honest with you, we have no issue with our customers dealing with people in South Africa. I think they find that there's really, whether you're in London or South Africa, really makes no difference to our customers. And what's important is they're getting this great experience that our team are delivering for them, which is fantastic, and actually a level above what we could deliver in the UK with the UK team.
Well, maybe to jump in there, we'll come back to that just now. I mean, you about the whole recruitment process and that. I mean, you've grown in the last 12, 18 months, almost 30, 35 staff, and so we'll get into that just now. But, what have been some of your biggest challenges so far? And, you've spoken about everything's working well, but what have been the biggest challenges both in growing this team and the business with an international or two offices, and managing it, so what are the things that two or three things that are hard to do? You've obviously got them right, but you thought through that.
I guess the initial challenge is starting and doing something. So we had this plan of perhaps hiring people in South Africa. How do we actually do that? We're in London. We were quite lucky, and I think luck plays a part of every business. We were fortunate in that one of our team members here in the UK was South African. We kind of just decided, let's post something on LinkedIn to say we're looking to hire people in South Africa. We did that, and we had something like 700 applications or something for one job. So that was the first challenge, which actually ended up being not that difficult of a challenge in the end, assuming you have access to the right people in the right markets who can open the door for you, which we had, which was absolutely fantastic. And then after that, the challenge really then became, okay, we've got these people in South Africa now, and we're moving delivery from the UK to South Africa. How do we make sure that there's nothing gets lost in the handover, in the lost in translation, so to speak, and make sure that we're still delivering well for our customers? And that was a period of ongoing challenge, to be honest with you, probably for about 6 months or so, where we had to get people up to speed with how we do things, who our customers were, get our customers used to these new people. And you know how it goes in business. Sometimes you have a plan of, we're going to do this slowly over a period of time. And then, we had some people in the UK who left to go to other opportunities. We had to accelerate that a bit faster. And so that became a challenge, really, is managing what we're delivering, our product, our service we're delivering to our customers, at the same time as managing that transformation of delivering from the UK to South Africa. And that was I know many people in our sort of management team had lots of long nights trying to solve that one, but we got through it, and it's testament to the team really that we got through that period, and we now have a really great foundation to build from. It wasn't easy, and I think that's the same with any startup, any business really. The tough times, you just have to keep on pushing through and solve problems, and we did that. But that was definitely the biggest challenge.
Cool. And I just want to elaborate on that point a little bit more. So I guess the point you make is that your business didn't stop. Okay, so you're building this team, and you're trying to keep existing clients happy at the same time. I guess that's one of the key points. Just if you can maybe just touch on some of the maybe operational aspects of making that happen. So things like labor laws and recruiting processes and all the sort of back end, sort of unsexy stuff. I mean, how did you find that? So how did you make sure that, from a UK business perspective, you weren't falling foul of legislation, and understanding the SA law and all of that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. I think initially, and still now to some extent, although we are exploring now other options for the future, we were very much around, we want to do this quickly. Like, it's only been just over a year since we started trading with a team in South Africa. We want to do it quickly, and we want to test the waters. Let's do this. And there were a bunch of people who were quite happy to be, I guess, paid as a contractor, as a freelancer, and would manage their own tax affairs. So that was a really quick way in. So we've got people who want to manage their own tax affairs and be contractors and freelancers, but at the same time, we still gave them the security that the UK would team contractually. So from a commercial contract point of view, they had the same security as a standard employee here in the UK, but they were operating as a contractor. And so that really helped us go faster in the first, I guess, year or so. And now I guess we're getting to the point where we need to start thinking about, perhaps having a South African payroll and those types of matters, which gets much more complicated. And I think in that situation, you really need to build partnerships with people. So, there are a few companies who offer services such as employer of record. And I think anyone who's looking to expand into another territory and hire people in other countries, I would say that's a really good short-term way of being able to cover those things. Is there's platforms like Deal, for example, that I'm sure people have heard of. And there are some smaller services as well that allow you to actually hire people in overseas territories without worrying about the entire headache of, okay, I've got to set it all up from scratch myself and manage it and have a board of directors over there and all of those other things. So I think we're very fortunate now living in a time of, it's now easier than ever to expand a business overseas. And to build a global business is the easiest it's ever been. And that's thanks to those types of platforms. So I think that's my advice to people who are thinking about doing that is to do that initially. I wouldn't necessarily advise people to go down the route of setting everything up from scratch themselves, but go down the route of using third-party employer records or even using contractors to get started.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I wanted to pick up on the point around just trends in global outsourcing. There's this whole digital nomad concept and work anywhere and live anywhere. And I think South Africa's got a couple of cities where that really works. I think Cape Town's probably one of the more popular options, but I mean, you can obviously hire people from anywhere. This trend in outsourcing, I mean, among your peers in the UK, or are you seeing a lot more of this where they're tapping into other markets to service UK clients, or are you still doing something a little bit unusual?
I would say when we first started, which was only, like I said, 18 months ago, exploring the opportunity, it wasn't very common. There were a few, I'd heard of a few smaller firms, so little pockets of people starting to do this. And they were typically South Africans who have come to the UK and seen an opportunity, basically. Well, actually, we can trade, we can get UK customers, and we can use people in South Africa to deliver that, or in the US perhaps. And that's been primarily what we'd seen. However, in the last 6-12 months, I've noticed many more companies in the finance and accounting space starting to use and hire people in South Africa, whether that be outsourcing or kind of insourcing. I call it insourcing, but hiring your own team. I know there's quite a few outsourcing companies in South Africa who are starting to specialize in serving UK businesses. But I also noticed, like us, lots of other, like there's a few mid-tier firms, larger accounting firms, traditional firms, who are now starting to hire people in South Africa as part of their team rather than outsourced. So it's definitely becoming a trend, and I think for the next few years it's going to accelerate, mainly because of the talent pool in South Africa. I think that's the key message really, is that the accounting and finance talent in South Africa is absolutely fantastic.
100%. Graham, I mean, so I think you've spoken a little bit about, how you found the right partners and those other. Maybe you can just elaborate a little bit more. So yes, you've used some of the tools and the technology and all of that stuff to simplify the process, but how did you actually go about finding the right partners? So yes, you've built 25, 30 odd people in country, but those initial sort of few partners, how did you source them, find people who would kind of fit into your vision? And that, was it existing connections that you had, or was it, how did you go about vetting, finding those people?
I think initially we hired some amazing people who then connected us to other people they knew. It felt like people saw this as a big opportunity. So initially was you find one or two people. So remote hiring using LinkedIn, and then assuming you hire the people who are really aligned and on board with your vision and see the value in what you're doing, they tend to then tell other people about you. So that's actually how from a team point of view, that's how we started, is that we hired some people who then told many other people about us and the opportunities that were available at Edition. And that then just got bigger and bigger, almost like a network effect of just people telling other people about opportunities, which is absolutely fantastic. But I think other side of things, so that's hiring, but the other side of just doing business in other territories. And like I said, we also have a US arm as well. And so we have partners in the US as well as South Africa. I think for me, it was although it can feel quite strange initially, you kind of just, my strategy is go to the place. And sometimes you go without even an agenda or without any meetings booked, and go there, explore, take some time to really get into understanding the culture of the place, how things work, start meeting people, and start messaging people on LinkedIn and setting up meetings in those places with people. And then before you know it, those people are introducing to other people. And I honestly, I just feel like that is the way to expand internationally, is to build relationships with people in that territory to begin with, people that you really connect well with and get on well with. They'll introduce you to other people, and just keep on building that network. And that's what we did in South Africa, and what we do in the US as well.
I mean, I think, Graham, if I can jump in there, maybe just to share, some of our experience with Bizwell. I think, the tools like LinkedIn and whatever are great for trying to find people who think about the world in the same way as you, and Zoom and all those things are fantastic. But I completely agree with that. There's no replacement for spending time in the market. And it's different to going on holiday to a place. If you come to London or the UK on holiday, you're doing one thing. Come and actually spend a week or two. And I think you did that the same in South Africa. Yeah. Have lots of coffees without an agenda. And I think it's important to find people that you trust. Our experience has been people will listen and be educated online, but people will only shake hands and do business with you once they've looked you in the eye and feel that they can trust you and what have you. So I think that's really practical and sage advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ghost, I don't even move on to the next question. I see there's also a few questions coming through in the chat, which we'll come back to. So I'll hand over to you for a few minutes.
Yeah, there's a couple of juicy ones in the chat that I think we do need to probably get to. I think maybe the last of the questions that we really wanted to get through is just plans to add to your sort of UK South Africa axis. Are you going to stick to South Africa as your outsourcing? Are you looking at other places? I mean, obviously the time zone, as you said, is incredibly useful, and it's kind of proven itself to you. But are there other countries of interest for you?
We this is something that comes up quite a bit because, like I said, we operate in the UK, which is great, and it's a really good size market for us. So we can build a great business in the UK, no question, and that's the plan, and we will. But you've also got the US, which is a huge market. We have a product which is quite scalable as well. So naturally, the US market is something we should focus on. And however, delivering for US businesses in South Africa is not really something that works so well. I mean, we have had conversations around people working different hours and shift work and everything else, but I don't think that's a very good long-term solution. So I think if we were to really go big in the US, we would need to think of a slightly different model, perhaps. No, I think the back office work can still absolutely happen in South Africa, and I think building that talent density in South Africa is a really good idea for us and makes a lot of sense, and start to build that out to be almost like a best-in-class back office team in South Africa. However, in the US, I do feel like we need to hire people on the ground in the US that are customer facing, or at least in the vicinity in the right time zone. So the other places that we looked at is Latin America, for example. Now that it's more complicated because of language, but there are a significant number of people who do speak English and are quite au fait with international ways of doing business. So that's something we're exploring. I think Latin America for the US market, but it isn't as easy and is a nicer fit as South Africa and the UK. It's almost like a match made in heaven, to be honest. I don't know what your experience is with the US, Graham, because I know you're looking to expand.
I think
well.
I think Graham, what's really interesting. I mean, I had a client a while ago who was operating in sort of Europe and Eastern Europe, and there were some obvious opportunities, and then going as far as China to expand into South America. And I remember the CEO at the time saying to me, "Listen, he wants to sleep." They didn't want a 24/7 operation, So those are practical things we don't often think about when we think about expanding internationally. But I think something we actually shared over breakfast earlier is that when we're thinking about going west, is can we focus on the product or parts of our product suite which are more automated? I mean, so we do talk a lot about that. So, same time zone and same access, it's a lot easier to add the sort of high touch value adds. When you go, west to America, perhaps just focus on the more automated stuff, but you've got a lot more volume there. So, you can kind of get a great result in a different way. So, I think those are some of the things we're thinking about, is maybe not taking the full product suite, but the easily repeatable and scalable stuff without human touch needed. And the same way that you do have back office support from here. And also the types of roles you have in country, so some customer facing relationship roles. People want to know there's somebody on the ground they can engage and trust. So
yeah, I think that's really important that whichever market you're in, from a source market point of view, you have that presence from a customer service, customer experience point of view, because people expect that. And I think there may be obviously there's always cases where it's a very let's sort of say straightforward software solution or something, and you could easily have customer support overseas, no problem at all. But with perhaps Graham, with BizVal actually in your platform, maybe that's something you could work with us. There's much more kind of service element involved and business partnering people, and our customer service is much more intertwined with their business. For us, I feel like we need people on the ground, but there's no reason why a huge element of the work can't be done overseas in different time zones too. It's not like things don't happen so quickly. It's not like we need to be working in the same time zone. Things can happen overnight, or a small lag doesn't really matter too much.
Agreed. Maybe we can jump into one or two of the questions that have come through in the chat, and I think they also mirror some of the other things we wanted to talk about. The first one was from Mark, and I think we touched on this in the intro. It asked if Graham D is a chartered accountant, and is this an advantage or not? I think Graham, you mentioned that you SEMA qualified, but without getting too technical, it might be worth just touching on that, about the different qualifications and what they mean in different markets. The UK has got a very different view on, you've got the ICAEW Institute, you've got a bunch of other chartered accountant accreditations. But maybe, just touch on kind of what your experience has been in the finance world around does that, can you hire a chartered accountant in South Africa, for argument's sake, at a similar cost to what you're hiring a bookkeeper in the UK? Maybe just elaborate on that and if it makes any difference.
Yeah, sure. Just reading Mark's question there. Yeah, I am a chartered accountant. I guess I'm qualified accountant, chartered accountant. There's slightly different terminologies, but CIMA qualified. So I definitely there's no real advantage from a tax or accounting point of view of me being a chartered accountant and operating in South Africa, because the legislation is completely different, to be honest. Although there's lots of similarities, the framework is very similar. It's really not the same. But I think the general business understanding you have from working in finance and being an accountant absolutely helps with these things. I think having that business background is really valuable. I think, if you're looking to do that, ideally partner with someone who has that kind of business expertise. Yeah, so in the UK, we've got a bunch of different qualifications, and CIMA is one of them, which is more internationally recognized, which I know lots of people in South Africa, lots of people in our team choose to go down the CIMA route because of the international element to it. But it's very much focused on it's management accounting, really, but it's in kind of like strategic finance and more business focused, whereas the other qualifications in the UK, as you mentioned, Graham, ICAEW, Chartered Accountants England and Wales, the Chartered Accountants Scotland, and ACCA, which is also international, more focused on kind of like audit and tax, although they're all pretty similar. So I'm less focused on audit and tax and more business and finance and strategy. And I know that in South Africa you have a similar type setup. You've got CIMA, you've got CA as well, which is very much focused on tax. But I'm not sure it has a huge benefit with me expanding into South Africa, in summary. But perhaps that business experience absolutely helps.
It's a very South African thing where chartered accountant qualification is almost like, you go to the States and everyone has to have an MBA, and
yes,
I think you do realize that when you go into different jurisdictions that it doesn't, yes, it's got some weighting, but not to the same extent as a lot of our South African listeners might understand it to have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it kind of carries a different weight in different geographies, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought for people who might have misheard it when they heard you say SEAM qualified, it's CIMA. It's not that he seems qualified. CIMA means management accounting. It's not like some non-executive director stories we've had in the headlines this week. So he is qualified. It's not that he seems qualified.
Exactly. CIMA.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll pick out the next question then from the chat. So, from a tax obligations perspective, I do know that the South African government is starting to make it a little bit harder for this kind of SA outsourcing. They're trying to put more PAYE obligations on international hirers of talent here.
Yeah.
So there's a question around the SA tax obligations. I think you touched on this employer of record concept. So it's quite, I'm assuming that's someone who basically hires the people here and then charges you and they sort out all the tax. Sounds like a typical ridiculous scenario thanks to stupid rules, but let me maybe start
exactly. There's a couple of like Deal is a good example. That's a global brand, but yeah, exactly. They kind of set up the payroll for you. They register the payroll. They process the PAYE, the payroll. They make sure people pay the appropriate taxes and pay them the net pay, without you even needing to worry about registering in that country. So that's one way of making sure people that are employees are dealt with properly from a tax point of view. Now, if they're contractors, then I guess they'll have an accountant or someone to support them with that.
Talk about the shovel in the gold rush, hey, of South Africans looking for international.
Yeah, exactly.
International employment opportunities.
It does sound like it's getting quite complex in South Africa, to be honest, from a legislative point of view.
Yeah. Now,
there's a specific question from Andrew, and I think maybe it's linked to that. You might have touched on it earlier, Graham, but the question is what premium are you paying over SA rates? So I suppose the question is, you hiring South Africans, are you paying them what they would earn in South Africa? Or are you actually paying them kind of somewhere in between what they could, so you're paying, as South Africans are getting paid really well, but you're still having a saving relative to the UK? I mean, what's your approach there?
Yeah, I think the strategy from day one when it comes to pay was that we want to make sure we pay people top of the market. So We pay people at the top of the market for the role that they're fulfilling, and that will continue to be the strategy. Now that most likely is some discount on what we pay people in the UK, absolutely. But I do see that gap narrowing, and it depends on the roles as well. So if we're talking, customer support versus accountants versus our tech team, the gap between, let's say, the UK salaries and South African salaries are closing across all of them. Actually, I've noticed more so in sort of other areas. So like in dev, for example, the salary gap is much smaller than it is in the accounting, which is a much bigger gap in customer support. So there is still a discount, but I do think that over time that discount will disappear. I don't think it's a long-term thing. I don't think you could really plan a long-term business strategy around that arbitrage, because I don't think it will continue forever because of the globalization of the workforce, as we talked about before. And because it's now easier for people to get remote work with overseas companies, I do feel and see that gap in salary is definitely getting smaller.
So, I mean, having said that, I guess that implies that the outsourced strategy is not purely a cost play. It sounds like it's more around access to skills and access to lifestyle. So somebody who's earning, for argument's sake, 50,000 quid in South Africa can live a far better lifestyle and is probably far more motivated, engaged than that person earning 50,000 quid in the UK. So is that the core underpin? Is it around productivity and lifestyle and access to skills as opposed to a pure cost saving play?
Yeah, it's definitely more about access to skills. And of course, look, there is a benefit of cost initially, which helps. I think when you're a young company and you're scaling, any benefit like that you can obtain is worth its weight in gold. It's amazing. So of course, in the short term, what it's allowed us to do is allowed us to build out teams and create a really scalable base and infrastructure to then build on top of that, which is fantastic. But you're right. The primary reason for doing it is really for talent, not for cost. I think there are other places in the world that you can outsource to for much lower cost. And I'm just thinking, for example, India is a really good example of that, where you can outsource to India and it would be, a fraction of the cost of outsourcing to South Africa. But there's other complications that come with that, such as time zone, language. The cultural differences are much wider than they are perhaps for South Africa and the UK as well. So it's really for skills and the limited difference in culture and time zone.
Absolutely.
I find it interesting. Sorry, Graham. I just wanted to comment on how interesting I find it that the gap is closing, because there are some structural reasons why it should stay big. So one of them has been touched on in the comments, which is employment equity legislation. That's a reality of South Africa. There are rules in place around this stuff, and it drives people to seek work where they can find it. I mean, bluntly, if you can't get a job in a South African corporate, where are you going to look? You're going to look internationally. So these are the sort of structural things that I would think are driving an ongoing discount. That plus South Africa's, economic growth, which let's just say is not as good as our rugby. I would think that this stuff actually keeps that gap quite high. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, and there is a gap, and hope. I mean, for the sake of foreign businesses looking to invest in South Africa, I would hope that gap continues to some extent, because that's one of the reasons why the investment and the outsourcing model is working so well. It's absolutely one of the reasons. But I do think as more people start to do that, and there's much more demand for those roles, I think it will get much more competitive. Yeah, but you're right. There will probably continue to be a gap to some extent. Who knows how big a gap that is?
Graham, I guess the last question from my side, and then we can ask Ghost to wrap up, and maybe some closing thoughts from you. But you touched briefly on that around some cultural differences, and I know this is a finance and business valuation thing, but I think it is important, just briefly. How have you ensured creating a common company culture? I mean, it's a softer issue, but how have you done that? Have you like weekly stand-up Zoom calls, or do you have your annual get-togethers? How have you done that?
Yeah, good question. And I won't say that we've got the perfect answer to that yet. Actually, it's an ongoing thing that we're always working on. But I think the way that we do, we are a remote business first. That kind of helped us in a huge way when we started hiring in South Africa, because we were already a remote business pretty much, and so we were really just bolting on new people in another country, but we were absolutely remote. So those ways of working that we had, which were really regular check-ins, we use Slack, for example, to communicate. So we encourage people to huddle if they got a question, just huddle with your colleague and solve problems together. And I think it's just about staying in touch and regular communication. So we make sure we have our regular weekly meetings with people, make sure everyone's on the same page. And I think transparency around communication as well is key. But the most important thing I found for creating that kind of singular culture, although it sort of feels like the end goal that you're always striving towards, is making sure you're hiring people who are aligned with your values. And that's something that we're very big on. I think we've just started to change it now, but absolutely the first 30 people, I interviewed every single one of them. And my interview was very focused on values and whether they were a good fit culturally, because they'd already gone through the process of they can do the work. It was now about, are they a good fit culturally? So that's the first thing. And then secondly, I think, is just around making sure as a remote business that you continue to stay in touch and communicate regularly. Not too much where it's a drain on time for people, but regular communication and being very transparent.
And I'll throw this in here because that's when we met face to face for the first time, is having your year-end function in the Cape Winelands in the middle of summer. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, exactly. And those gets, for sure. So we have, we actually got different pockets of people around different cities in South Africa and in the UK. So we're sort of Manchester, London, Cape Town, Joburg, and then some people around like Mossel Bay as well. But what we do encourage is people to get together. So we do a regular get together. So I know recently the guys got together, they played paddle and went for dinner, and those types of things are really important. And for me, that's getting that human connection is the best way to build teams and to get people feeling connected to a company is if they have strong relationships with people at that company and they feel like they're part of something. And I think that's why those social interactions are really important.
Fantastic. Ghost, do you want to maybe close out with one
Yeah.
or two closing thoughts and then we can wrap up?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to share is just also some of the experience I've had talking to friends who have businesses. And there's a question here, the last one in the chat around, software development outsourcing to South Africa. I think if I listen to all of this and I listen to my friends who have their businesses here, etc., I think a lot of the software development outsourcing can happen often from South Africa to elsewhere in the world, like Eastern Europe. And I think with software dev, it's very much someone locked in a dark room. That's only half a joke, because I have a very good friend who has a software business and their devs are literally in a dark room right there. And that's how they like it,
Yeah.
And in a dark room somewhere in the world, banning out code till all hours of the night. They're not client facing. So they can literally be anywhere. I think, Graham, what you've confirmed today and what I believed going into this is South Africa is this Venn diagram of highly skilled people, especially in finance, certainly elsewhere as well, but in finance, and an ability to deal with your customers because the time zone is good, the language is quite good, our accent is not too difficult. I think a lot of Europeans are used to hearing it, especially in the UK. That stuff makes a big difference. And I think South Africa, kind of hits that Venn diagram. I'm not sure we're a great place to outsource software development because you're probably paying a premium to South Africans for what you don't need, which is time zone and client service. So there it's much easier to go somewhere else in the world, silly time zone, very different accent. That would just be my overall learning from this, is that's why South Africa is interesting to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the things you do, you hit the nail on the head there, I think, with the reason why South Africa is attractive for us. From a software point of view, now we do actually have some devs based in South Africa in our team. And the reason why they did that is because we're looking to really build that kind of larger team and get that talent density, like I mentioned to you in South Africa. But you're right, there probably are opportunities elsewhere for that. However, I do find if you're outsourcing, sure, there's definitely cheaper alternatives. But if you want to hire people to be part of your team and be aligned with your vision and go on the journey with you, actually hiring software developers in South Africa is a really good idea, because it is, like I said, marginally less than hiring in the US or the UK, but you get people in the same time zone, same language, people are used to dealing with people with South African accent. The great thing about London is it's really cosmopolitan. It's a melting pot for God knows how many cultures. So people in London are absolutely used to dealing with people with all sorts of accents. So there's absolutely no issue there. So I absolutely would consider software development outsourcing in South Africa, and we already do. But I do get your point, Ghost, around other countries perhaps being more value to be had there when it comes to software development.
Yeah. Graham, thanks for your insights. I mean, I'll close with a couple of thoughts, and I'm going to do a bit of a BizVal punt. I mean, what's interesting, if you've shared a business that had an existing client base in the UK and have obviously shifted the servicing of that base elsewhere. And something you didn't mention, but in that process, you actually went from 350 odd clients down to about 200. So you actually you made your offering a little bit more premier over time, and used the better skill set to be able to do that as well. From a BizVal point of view, we're doing things the other way around. We've actually already got a team and a business in South Africa, and we're now trying to grow the market and find clients in the UK. So yeah, I think a lot of the principles and that still apply though. You've got to find partners in the region that you can trust. Your mindset's important. You spoke about that. You've got to think out the box. I think importantly, you can't make assumptions about how people act or think or behave in the market. And that comes through getting to know people, focusing on culture, spending time in markets. So yeah, certainly I hope that today our listeners have been able to take some of that insight. These are not easy things to deal with, but if you want to be globally and you want to be a relevant business today, you've got to be thinking about how do you grow and how do you expand outside just your little suburb, so to speak. So Graham, thank you again for joining us. Ghost, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, and Graham, any kind of wrap up thoughts from your side. So yeah, I'll just give you a minute on the floor, Ghost and Graham, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
I think I'm done. If Graham's got anything else he wants to share, let's hear it. Otherwise, we can all go off and enjoy the afternoon.
Enjoy the sun in South Africa and enjoy the wind in London. But yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's been great conversation. And yeah, nothing really. Just to add that, like I said, I would stress it's easier than ever now to start a business and go international. So I would really encourage people to be bold and just go and start and just do something. Just start, go there, experience something, and like you said, solve problems along the way, and you'll be surprised what you can achieve, I think.
Fantastic. And thanks to everyone for tuning in today. Our next webinar is scheduled probably on the 22nd of Feb, but it'll be finalized in the next couple of days. And we hope that 2024 is a prosperous and successful year for all of you. Remember that our webinars are available or will be available on YouTube. And please feel free to share with your friends and colleagues if you've taken value out of today. So thanks very much, everyone, and we'll chat again soon.